Before we step through these ancient stones together, if this journey speaks to your heart, consider subscribing to this channel. There are many roads ahead, many voices to hear, and your presence here matters. Now let us enter. The sun lowers itself slowly over Jerusalem on this 17th day of October, and the light falls golden across limestone that has stood for centuries. The Jaffa Gate rises before you, its archway worn smooth by the passage of countless feet, its towers casting long shadows across the plaza where vendors are beginning to fold their wares into wooden crates. The air carries the mingled scent of cardamom coffee brewing in a nearby shop, fresh-baked challah from a bakery tucked into the labyrinth of alleyways, and the faint sweetness of jasmine clinging to a courtyard wall somewhere beyond sight. You can hear the call to evening prayer drifting from a minaret, the murmur of conversation in Hebrew and Arabic and Armenian, the shuffle of sandals and boots on ancient stone. This is the threshold. This is where the old city breathes. A shopkeeper stands in the doorway of his small store just inside the gate, a man in his 60s with silver threading through his beard and deep lines around his eyes that speak of laughter and sorrow in equal measure. His name is Abraham, and he sells prayer shawls, menorahs, olive wood carvings of the seven-branched candelabra, brass mezuzahs engraved with the Shema. He is closing for the evening, pulling a metal grate halfway down when he pauses. Something in the air feels different tonight. He cannot name it, but it is there, a quiet tremor beneath the ordinary rhythm of the day. He leaves the grate half-drawn and steps back inside, lighting a candle on the counter. The flame catches and steadies, casting warm light over shelves crowded with sacred objects. He touches his fingers to his lips and then to a small mezuzah on the doorframe, whispering the words he has spoken every evening for 40 years. Hear, O Israel! The Lord is our God. The Lord is one. Nearby, in a narrow lane that twists away from the gate into the heart of the Jewish quarter, an elderly man makes his way slowly toward a small synagogue tucked between two residential buildings. His name is Yitzhak and he is a cantor, though his voice is not what it once was. Age has cracked the high notes and stolen some of the power from his lungs, but his heart still carries the melodies and that is enough. He wears a simple black coat and a knitted kippah, and he walks with a cane, its tip tapping softly on the stones. He can hear the evening sounds of the city settling, doors closing, families gathering for dinner, children laughing somewhere above in an open window. He reaches the synagogue and pushes open the heavy wooden door, stepping into the cool dimness within. A few others are already there, men and women taking their places, opening prayer books, adjusting their talatot over their shoulders. Yitzhak moves to his usual spot near the front and begins to hum softly, warming his voice, preparing for the evening service. A young man hurries through the gate just as the light begins to fade. His name is Daniel and he is a pilgrim, though that word feels too grand for what he is. He is 23, a student from Tel Aviv, and he has come to Jerusalem seeking something he cannot quite articulate. Peace perhaps. Understanding. A sense of belonging that has eluded him in the noise and rush of the city where he lives. He carries a small backpack and wears jeans and a t-shirt, a knitted kippah pinned to his curly hair. He has never been particularly observant, but lately something has been pulling him here, to this place where history layers upon history, where every stone seems to hold a story. He stops in the plaza and looks up at the gate, at the Arabic inscription carved into the stone above the arch, at the crenellation silhouetted against the deepening blue of the sky. He feels small here and that is not a bad thing. He feels held. Not far from Abraham's shop, in a courtyard draped with grapevines and potted geraniums, a man sits at a small table with a cup of tea cooling before him. His name is Hagop, and he is Armenian, a resident of the Armenian quarter whose family has lived in this city for generations beyond counting. He is a jeweler, his hands scarred from years of working with silver and gold, his eyes sharp despite his 70 years. He watches the sky change color and listens to the sounds of the city preparing for evening, and he thinks about his grandfather who used to tell him stories of this place, of the way different peoples could live side by side, sharing bread and grief and small kindnesses. Hagop is a Christian, a member of the Armenian Apostolic Church, and though his faith is different from that of his Jewish neighbors, he respects the rhythms of their observance. He knows that tonight, as every night, prayers will rise from the synagogues and the homes, that blessings will be spoken, that the ancient words will echo once more through these streets. In a workshop on a quiet lane, a calligrapher named Rashid bends over a piece of parchment, his hand steady as he forms Arabic letters with a fine-tipped brush. He is Muslim, a man of 50 with a gentle manner and a deep love for the written word. His workshop is small, cluttered with inks and papers, illuminated manuscripts hanging on the walls, verses from the Quran rendered in exquisite script. He is finishing a commission, a wedding gift for a young couple in the Muslim quarter, and he works with patience and care, knowing that the beauty of the letters is a form of prayer in itself. He can hear the call to evening prayer and he pauses, setting down his brush, rolling his shoulders. He will finish this later. For now there is prayer. The sun slips lower, and the light shifts from gold to rose to deep amber. Shadows lengthen and pool in doorways and alcoves. The temperature drops slightly and a breeze stirs the air, carrying with it the scent of cooking onions and cumin and the faint smokiness of charcoal fires. The city is preparing for night, for rest, for the quiet hours when the streets empty and the only sounds are footsteps and distant voices and the occasional bark of a dog. In the small synagogue where Yitzhak stands, the evening service has begun. Voices rise in unison, the ancient Hebrew prayers filling the space, echoing off the stone walls. The melody is older than memory, passed down through generations, and it carries with it the weight of longing and faith and survival. Yitzhak leads, his voice cracked but sure, and the others follow, their voices blending into a single sound that is both mournful and hopeful. They sing the Shema, the declaration of faith, the words that have been spoken by Jews in every corner of the world for millennia. Hear, O Israel! The Lord is our God. The Lord is one. The words rise and fall, a wave of sound, and for a moment, everything else fades away. And then, something happens. A noise from outside, sudden and sharp. A shout, perhaps, or the sound of something falling, metal clanging on stone. The prayers falter. Voices hesitate, eyes flick toward the door. Yitzhak pauses, his hand raised, and the congregation waits, listening. There is a commotion in the street, voices raised, not in anger but in alarm. Someone is calling out, urgent and breathless. The prayers stop. A young man near the back stands and moves toward the door, pushing it open, and the sounds of the street flood in. What is it? Someone asks. What has happened? Yitzhak sets down his prayer book and follows, his cane tapping quickly now as he makes his way to the door. Others come behind him, a small crowd spilling out into the narrow lane, looking around, trying to understand. The light is dim now, the sky a deep indigo, and the alley is shadowed, but they can see figures moving, hurrying toward the gate. There is a sense of urgency but not panic. Not yet. Yitzhak catches the arm of a man passing by, a neighbor he recognizes. What is it? He asks. What has happened? The man shakes his head, breathless. I do not know. Something at the gate. A man has collapsed, I think. They are calling for help. Yitzhak's heart tightens. He exchanges a glance with those around him, and without a word, they move together toward the gate, their footsteps quick on the stones. Daniel, the young pilgrim, is already there, having heard the commotion and run toward it. He pushes through a small crowd gathered near Abraham's shop and sees an older man sitting on the ground, his back against the wall, his face pale and slick with sweat. A woman kneels beside him, speaking to him in rapid Hebrew, her hand on his shoulder. He is conscious but clearly unwell, his breathing labored, his hand pressed to his chest. Abraham emerges from his shop, moving quickly despite his age. He kneels beside the man and Daniel recognizes him, the shopkeeper he saw earlier. Abraham speaks softly, reassuringly, asking questions, assessing. Has someone called for help? He asks the crowd. Yes, someone says. An ambulance is coming. Abraham nods and turns his attention back to the man on the ground, keeping him calm, telling him to breathe slowly, that help is on the way. Daniel crouches nearby, feeling helpless but wanting to do something, anything. He looks around at the faces gathered, and he sees concern, compassion, the immediate instinct to help a stranger in distress. Yitzhak arrives, pushing gently through the crowd, and he sees the scene and understands. He moves closer, standing near Abraham, and he begins to speak, his voice low and steady. He is not praying aloud, not exactly, but the words he murmurs are drawn from the Psalms, fragments of verses that speak of protection and comfort. The Lord is my shepherd. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. The words are soft, meant for the man on the ground, for those gathered around, for himself. Daniel hears them and feels something shift inside him, a loosening of the tension he did not realize he was holding. The man on the ground opens his eyes wider, focusing on Yitzhak, and he nods slightly as if the words are reaching him, steadying him. Abraham continues to monitor his condition, speaking quietly, reassuring. The woman beside him, perhaps his wife, holds his hand tightly, and her lips move in silent prayer. The crowd stands in a loose circle, watching, waiting, offering their presence as a form of support. And then, from the back, someone else begins to speak, another fragment of prayer, a blessing. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Birkat Kohanim, the priestly blessing. The words are ancient, prescribed in the Torah, spoken by Aaron and his sons over the people of Israel, and they carry with them a weight of holiness and hope. The voice belongs to a woman middle-aged, her head covered with a scarf, and she speaks the blessing softly but clearly, and others pick it up, echoing it, adding their voices. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. The words ripple through the gathered crowd, and something extraordinary begins to happen. The blessing spreads. It moves from person to person, voice to voice, not in a coordinated way but organically, naturally, as if the words themselves are seeking out every ear, every heart. Daniel feels the words wash over him, and he finds himself speaking them too, though he has not said them since he was a child at his grandfather's table. The syllables feel strange and familiar all at once, and his voice is hesitant at first but it grows stronger. Around him, others are doing the same, Jews from the neighborhood, residents of the quarter, people who were passing by and stopped when they saw the crowd. The blessing fills the space, rising into the cooling air, and it does not stop. It moves beyond the circle gathered around the fallen man, flowing into the nearby lanes, carried by those who heard it and felt compelled to pass it on. Hagop, the Armenian jeweler, hears the voices from his courtyard and steps out into the street, curious. He sees the crowd near the gate and moves toward it, and as he approaches he hears the blessing, the Hebrew words rising in a chorus. He does not speak Hebrew fluently, but he recognizes the cadence, the rhythm, and he understands the intent. He pauses at the edge of the crowd, listening, and then he adds his own prayer, a blessing from his own tradition, spoken in Armenian, quiet but fervent. Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy. Protect and heal. His words join the others, a different language, a different faith but the same heart. Rashid, the calligrapher, emerges from his workshop, drawn by the sound of many voices. He walks toward the gate, his steps quick, and he sees the crowd and hears the blessing and he stops, taking it in. He stands on the periphery, respectful, and then, almost without thinking, he begins to recite a verse from the Quran, a prayer for healing and peace. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. His voice is low, blending with the others, and though the words are different, the intention is the same. Blessing. Oh, a plea for mercy. The ambulance arrives, its siren cutting through the evening, and the crowd parts to let the medics through. They work quickly and efficiently, checking the man's vital signs, asking questions, preparing to move him. Abraham steps back, giving them space, and Yitzhak does the same, but the prayers do not stop. The blessing continues, spreading now beyond the immediate scene, carried by those who were there and are now moving away, returning to their homes, to their own evening routines, but taking the words with them. In doorways and windows, people hear the blessing and repeat it, passing it along like a flame from one candle to another. As the medics lift the man onto a stretcher and carry him toward the ambulance, the crowd begins to disperse, but slowly, reluctantly, as if they are not quite ready to let go of what has happened. The man's wife follows the stretcher, and Abraham walks with her, speaking softly, offering to accompany her to the hospital. She nods, grateful, and they disappear into the ambulance, which pulls away slowly, its lights flashing against the old stones. The plaza near the gate is quieter now, but the blessing has not stopped. It has moved into the lanes and alleyways, into the courtyards and small squares, into the homes where families are gathering for evening meals. People speak the words to each other, to their children, to their neighbors. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. The words become a thread weaving through the city, connecting stranger to stranger, heart to heart. Daniel stands alone near the gate, watching the ambulance disappear, and he feels something he has not felt in a long time. Connection. Belonging. Purpose. He does not fully understand what has happened, but he knows it is significant. He turns and begins to walk through the lanes, following the sound of voices, and he sees people standing in doorways, speaking the blessing, passing it on. He sees a mother kneeling beside her young daughter, whispering the words into her ear, and the child repeating them solemnly. He sees an elderly couple standing on a rooftop, looking out over the city, their voices joining the chorus. He sees a group of young men gathered in a small plaza, and they are not praying in the formal sense, but they are speaking the blessing to each other, laughing and serious all at once, as if they have discovered something precious. The hours pass. The sky deepens from indigo to black, pricked with stars, and the moon rises, nearly full, casting silver light over the rooftops and domes. The city does not sleep. The blessing continues, moving through the Jewish quarter, spilling over into the Armenian quarter, where Haggap speaks the words in Hebrew to his neighbors, bridging the languages, the traditions. It reaches the Muslim quarter, where Rashid stands in his doorway and speaks his own prayer for peace and healing, and his neighbors nod in understanding, recognizing the spirit if not the words. It moves through the Christian quarter, where pilgrims from around the world hear the murmur of voices and step out of their hostels and ghost houses to listen, to add their own prayers in Spanish and Russian and Tagalog and English. Yitzhak returns to the synagogue, where a few members of the congregation have remained, waiting. They ask about the man, and Yitzhak tells them what he knows, that he was taken to the hospital, that Abraham went with him, that they can only pray for his recovery. And then, without prompting, they begin the evening service again, picking up where they left off, but something has changed. The prayers feel different now, more urgent, more necessary, more alive. The words are the same, but the hearts speaking them have been opened, softened, made raw by the unexpected intrusion of suffering and the collective response of compassion. They finish the service, and as they file out into the night, they speak the blessing to each other, pressing it into the darkness like a lamp. Abraham returns from the hospital near midnight, his face weary but relieved. The man will be all right, the doctors have said. A heart episode, but not a major one. He will need rest and care, but he will recover. Abraham walks slowly through the empty lanes, his footsteps echoing, and he finds his shop still half open, the candle on the counter burned down to a stub. He steps inside, lowers the grate fully now, locks the door. He stands in the darkness for a moment, and then he speaks the blessing aloud, to the walls, to the shadows, to the night. May the Lord bless you and keep you. His voice is rough with exhaustion, but the words are clear and he feels them settle into his chest, a weight and a lightness all at once. Daniel does not return to his hostel. He wanders the lanes until the early hours of the morning, unable to stop, unwilling to let go of what he has experienced. He climbs a set of stone steps to a rooftop terrace, a place he found earlier in the day, and he sits on the low wall looking out over the city. The lights are sparse now, most windows dark, but here and there he can still see the glow of a lamp, hear the faint murmur of a voice. The blessing has not stopped. It has become part of the night itself, woven into the fabric of the city. He thinks about his life in Tel Aviv, the noise and the rush, the feeling of being adrift, and he realizes that he has been looking for this, for a sense of being part of something larger than himself, something ancient and enduring. He thinks about the man who collapsed, a stranger, and how the response was immediate, instinctive, collective. No one asked who the man was, what he believed, where he came from. They simply helped. They simply prayed. As the hours stretch toward dawn, the city begins to quiet further. The voices fade, the footsteps become less frequent. But the blessing does not disappear. It lingers in the air, in the stones, in the hearts of those who spoke it and those who heard it. It becomes a memory, yes, but more than that. It becomes a presence, something that will be carried forward into the days ahead, a reminder of what is possible when compassion breaks through the ordinary, when the impulse to bless overcomes the impulse to turn away. The sky begins to lighten in the east, a pale glow spreading along the horizon, and the stars fade one by one. The city stirs. A rooster crows somewhere in a courtyard. A door opens and a woman steps out to sweep her threshold. The first call to morning prayer rises from a minaret, and somewhere in the Jewish quarter, the first minyan of the day begins to gather. The world turns and the new day arrives, and with it, the return of routine, of work and worry and the thousand small tasks that fill a life. But something has changed. In the hearts of those who were there, who spoke the blessing or heard it, who felt the wave of prayer wash over them in the darkness, there is a new awareness. A recognition that they are not alone, that they are part of a community, fragile and fractured as it may be, but real. That their words matter. That their presence matters. That a blessing spoken can travel farther than they ever imagined, touching lives they will never meet, kindling light in places they cannot see. Daniel rises from the rooftop as the sun breaks over the hills to the east, flooding the city with golden light. He is exhausted, his eyes gritty with lack of sleep, but he feels more awake than he has in years. He makes his way down the steps and through the lanes, back toward the Jaffa Gate, and he sees Abraham opening his shop, pulling up the metal grate, setting a kettle to boil on a small stove in the back. Daniel pauses and Abraham looks up, recognizing him, and he smiles, a tired but genuine smile. "Good morning," he says. "Shalom." "Shalom," Daniel replies, and the word feels weightier now, more than a greeting. He thinks about saying more, asking about the man, thanking Abraham for what he did, but he finds he does not need to. Abraham nods as if he understands, and he gestures to the kettle. "Yes." Daniel hesitates, then steps inside, grateful. They sit in companionable silence as the water heats, and through the open door, they watch the city come to life, people emerging into the streets, beginning their day. Yitzhak walks slowly toward the western wall for morning prayers, his cane tapping a steady rhythm on the stones. He passes Hagop's courtyard and sees the jeweler sitting at his small table with a cup of coffee, and they exchange nods, no words necessary. He passes Rashid's workshop, and the door is open, and he can see the calligrapher at his desk, already at work, and Yitzhak pauses, looking in, and Rashid glances up and raises a hand in greeting. Yitzhak raises his own hand in return, a simple gesture, but it feels significant. They do not know each other well, but they are neighbors, and last night in their own ways they prayed together. By the time the sun is fully risen, the events of the night before have begun to settle into memory. People go about their business, opening shops, preparing food, sending children off to school. But the blessing has not been forgotten. It has taken root. In kitchens and courtyards, parents speak it over their children. In shops and workshops, neighbors speak it to each other. In synagogues and homes, it is woven into the daily prayers. And beyond the Jewish quarter, in the other quarters of the old city, the echoes remain. Hagop thinks of it as he works on a silver necklace, his hands steady and sure. Rashid thinks of it as he forms Arabic letters on parchment, each stroke a meditation. Pilgrims from around the world, who heard the murmur of voices in the night and did not understand the words but felt the intent, carry it with them as they walk the Via Dolorosa, as they light candles in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, as they stand at the western wall and slip folded prayers into the cracks between the stones. The man who collapsed, whose name is Shimon, wakes in the hospital and asks about those who helped him. His wife tells him about Abraham, about Yitzhak, about the crowd that gathered, about the blessing that spread through the streets. He listens and tears come to his eyes, and he asks her to write down the names of those he can thank. He will return to the old city, he tells her. He will go back to the gate and find them and speak his gratitude. And he will speak the blessing to them the way they spoke it over him. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. The days pass and the story of that night begins to be told, quietly at first in small circles and then more widely. It is not dramatic in the way of miracles or visions. It is simply the story of a community responding to a crisis with compassion, of a blessing that spread because people chose to pass it on, of a moment when the ordinary rhythms of life were interrupted and something extraordinary emerged. It is a story of connection, of the way a single act of care can ripple outward, touching lives in ways that cannot be measured or counted. And in the weeks that follow, when tensions rise in the city as they so often do, when news of conflict and division fills the air, people remember. They remember the night the prayers were interrupted at the Jaffa Gate, and how the interruption became a doorway to grace. They remember standing together in the darkness, speaking words of blessing, and they remember how it felt to be part of something larger than their individual fears and griefs. They remember, and they carry that memory forward, a seed of hope planted in the stony soil of a city that has known too much sorrow and too little peace. Daniel returns to Tel Aviv, but he is not the same. He carries the blessing with him, and he finds himself speaking it at unexpected moments to friends, to strangers, to himself when the noise of the city becomes too much. He speaks it, and he remembers the stones of Jerusalem, the faces of the people gathered at the gate, the feeling of being part of a wave of prayer that moved through the streets like wind, invisible but undeniable. He begins to study Hebrew more seriously, to attend services at a small synagogue near his apartment, to reach out to his grandfather, who is delighted and surprised by his sudden interest. And when people ask him what changed, he tells them about that night, about the man who collapsed and the blessing that spread, and he tells them that he learned something important. That blessing is not passive. That it requires action, voice, presence. That it is a choice we make again and again to speak life and peace over each other, even when, especially when, the world seems determined to speak death and division. Abraham continues to run his shop, selling prayer shawls and menorahs and olive wood carvings, but he finds that his interactions with customers have changed. He takes more time with them, listening to their stories, offering not just merchandise but encouragement, blessing. He speaks the Birkat Kohanim over travelers leaving the city, over young couples buying their first Shabbat candlesticks, over anyone who seems to carry a heavy burden. And people respond. They return to his shop, not just to buy but to talk, to be seen, to be blessed. His little store becomes a place of gathering, a small node in the vast network of connection that makes up the life of the city. Yitzhak's voice continues to crack and falter, but he does not stop leading prayers. And he finds that the congregation has grown. New faces appear, younger people, seekers, those who heard about the night at the gate and wanted to be part of a community that responds to crisis with blessing. The synagogue is more crowded now, and the prayers are louder, more fervent, more alive. Yitzhak thanks God for this, for the way suffering can sometimes open doors that remained closed in times of ease. Hagop and Rashid, who were acquaintances before, become friends. They begin to meet for tea once a week, sitting in Hagop's courtyard or in Rashid's workshop, talking about their work, their families, their faith. They discover they have much in common, despite the differences in tradition and language. They both love beauty. They both believe in the power of craft to connect the material and the spiritual. They both carry the memory of that night, the sound of voices blending in prayer, and they both want to honor it, to build on it. They begin to collaborate, creating pieces that blend Armenian and Islamic art, selling them in a small gallery near the gate, and using the proceeds to support families in need, regardless of faith or ethnicity. The blessing does not solve everything. The old city is still a place of tension and complexity, where ancient grievances simmer beneath the surface, where politics and religion intersect in dangerous ways. But the blessing has created a space, a pocket of possibility, where people can choose to see each other as human beings rather than representatives of tribes or ideologies. It is a small space, fragile and easily disrupted, but it is real. And it grows, slowly, quietly, as more people choose to enter it, to speak words of blessing over each other, to interrupt the ordinary rhythms of fear and suspicion with acts of unexpected kindness. On the anniversary of that night, a year later, a small gathering is held at the Jaffa Gate. It is not official, not organized by any authority, but word spreads and people come. Shimon is there, fully recovered, and he stands with Abraham and Yitzhak and Daniel and Hagop and Rashid, and they speak the blessing together in Hebrew and Armenian and Arabic and English, a chorus of voices rising into the evening air. Others join in, people who were there that night and people who were not but who have heard the story and want to be part of it. The blessing fills the plaza, and it moves into the lanes once more, carried by those who hear it and feel compelled to pass it on. And this time it does not stop with the dawn. It continues, day after day, week after week, becoming a rhythm, a practice, a habit of the heart. People speak blessings over each other in the markets, in the streets, in their homes. They speak them in times of joy and in times of sorrow. They speak them to friends and to strangers. They speak them because they have learned that words matter, that blessing is not magic but medicine, not a formula but a form of love. And slowly, imperceptibly, the old city begins to change. Not in dramatic ways, not in ways that make headlines, but in the small, hidden places where real transformation happens. In hearts softened by compassion. In relationships rebuilt after years of estrangement. In communities learning to see each other not as enemies but as neighbors, fellow travelers on the difficult road toward peace. The story of the blessing at the Jaffa Gate becomes part of the folklore of Jerusalem, told and retold, embellished and simplified, but always carrying at its core the same truth. That we are not powerless in the face of suffering. That we can choose to respond with blessing. That our words, spoken in faith and love, can travel farther than we imagine, lighting candles in the darkness, building bridges across divides, calling forth the best in each other even when the worst seems overwhelming. It is not a naive truth. Those who tell the story know that blessing alone cannot solve the deep conflicts that plague the city and the region. But they also know that without blessing, without the choice to speak life and peace over each other, there is no hope at all. And so they continue to speak it. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. As you walk away from the Jaffa Gate now, carrying this story with you, consider what blessings you might speak into your own world. What words of life and peace are waiting on your tongue, ready to be spoken over those you meet. The stones of Jerusalem have witnessed countless prayers, countless tears, countless moments of despair and hope. They have stood for centuries, and they will stand for centuries more, and the prayers spoken here will echo long after we are gone. But right now in this moment you are here. Your voice matters. Your blessing matters. Speak it. Pass it on. Let it spread like fire, like light, like wind, until the whole world is filled with the sound of voices calling down peace on each other, lifting up faces to the light, choosing blessing over curse, life over death, hope over despair. This is the way. This is the path. This is what it means to be human, to be made in the image of the one who speaks and creates, who blesses and calls forth life from the void. Walk in it. Live it. Be it. And if this journey has moved you, if these words have found a home in your heart, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. There are more stories to tell, more streets to walk, more voices to hear. Your presence here matters. Together we can carry these blessings forward into the days and years ahead, into the places where they are most needed. Amen. Shalom. Peace.